humbled every once in a while, and I think it's good to face a few issues. Hello, welcome back to my channel. Knits by Mandy. My name's Amanda, and today we have the 5th episode of the Knits by Mandy podcast. If you're new here, I have a pretty standard format. We'll start talking about finished objects, whips, acquisitions if I have any, future plans, and then I like to share at the end anything that kind of entertainment related I've been consuming. So whether it's like something that I've been watching or listening to while knitting, or books I've been reading. I have, I think, a podcast, a TV show, and a book to talk about at the end of today. So stick around for that if you're interested, or just come for the knitting. I don't really care. So let's get started. Just want to jump right into my finished objects from the month of July. So when I last met with you all, I was just recovering from COVID, and I believe I filmed the podcast on a Thursday, and that Friday I left to go to Pittsburgh. And in that podcast, I was working on this tank top, and this is the Outdoor Love pattern by Drops, knit in Drops Saffron, held double. The colors are off-white and light brown, I'm pretty sure. So I was working on that in the podcast. That version was the size medium, and I was just kind of working on the ribbing, and then I realized that was going to be too big. So before I left, I cast on the size small that night and had just started the ribbing, packed my bags. All my bags were packed. I was ready to go, leaving on a jet plane, and I went to Pittsburgh. I finished the ribbing when I was in Pittsburgh, and then I realized that I grabbed the wrong needle size. And that's kind of where the story starts with this tank top. So the pattern originally calls for knitting the ribbing in 4mm needles and then knitting the body in 5mm needles. I don't know why I said it like that. 5mm needles. And I guess I had accidentally just grabbed my 5.5s from my interchangeable set, and I was going to be home for 5 days, and I really just wanted to have some pretty simple knitting. I just finished camisole number 5, and that was really not really intricate, but it was a little technical, and I did ribbing on 3.25mm needles. So I was just ready for a bit of a change and an adjustment. So I was just want to have a DK cotton pattern that I can just do stockinette. And so this wasn't an expensive pattern. The yarn was not expensive. So I just decided to give it a try and see what the 5.5 would produce, even though I knew it was going to be a bit bigger. Thinking back, I could have sized down once more, or I could have just tried to knit the body in the 4mm needles. However, I just chose to do the 5.5. So the construction of this tank top is super basic. The pattern actually is knit flat and knit in panels and then seamed up the sides, but I decided that I did not want to do that, and I just wanted to knit in the round. So I made it a bottom-up construction, which I think the panels were bottom-up as well. You were doing decreases instead of increases for the armpits and the collar, and I just stopped where the armpit creases were. I put the back stitches on hold. I worked on the front separately, put these stitches on hold, did the back panel, and then did 3 needle bind off for the shoulders. A very simple construction, just to modify for working on panels and working in the round. If you're ever interested in doing that, I feel like it can make a pattern just easier to make in the round. And it's usually a pretty easy mathematical adjustment, because you just have to half and just pay attention to the pattern and your rows. Anyway, I did all of that, and as you can see, This is a very big garment for my body, and I've made oversized garments before, but usually an oversized garment like still has a certain fit to it that makes sense. And because this was just knit on too big of needles, it just fits weird. And I think this is a great lesson for beginners, just for me to know, even though I kind of knew this, I just didn't ever practice it, that if you change your needle size, it's gonna be kind of effed in the end. It's gonna be effed. So that's what happened with mine. I have some B-roll that I'll put in of showing exactly where the fit was wrong, but I mean, I'm sure you can just tell by looking at it. I think the straps ended up being too wider than I wanted them to be, and then there's a bunch of extra fabric when I wear it around this area and then in the armpits as well. And I actually want to talk about the armpits in this tank top, but that's a whole other story. And so for this, like the armpits like stick out kind of like corners, and it just looks really strange. It's not even a matter of it like being flattering, whatever that means. It just like doesn't look like it's a garment that's supposed to fit my body, you know? So, you know, I made the decision just to keep knitting to see what happened. I wasn't too attached to this project, so I'm like feeling fine. It's a little bit of a bummer, but it's not really that big of a waste of time how I see it. It's like you just knit things that you don't like, and that happens. It's just part of the process. So as you can see, I haven't even woven in the ends or blocked this, so I'm planning to frog it at some point. I just didn't feel like motivated to frog it immediately after. So I think what I'll do is I'll kind of continue my summer knitting plans, and then maybe depending on what the weather's like, I will try to repurpose this. I think I might try to swatch my yarn to see if I could make a gauge for the June top. I was thinking of making the June top light, but making something on 4mm needles sounds way more attractive to me right now. So we'll see what kind of fabric that produces, because all things aside, like the fabric is really nice. I feel like in the 5.5mm needle, it's just like kind of drapey and airy. The yarn itself, the Drops Saffron, it's really affordable. It's obviously not the softest cotton yarn I've ever felt in the world. And I think that bothers some people more than others. For me, I honestly really enjoy working with cotton. Like I just like how cotton fabric, like knit cotton fabric feels. I know some people don't love that, but I think I like it, and I like this yarn enough that I think I would buy it again. I'm not horribly impressed by it, but it's also not, it's not bad for the price either. So that's my short review on the yarn and the tank top. So that's my thought. I think the June top is my thought for repurposing, but if you have any other cotton tanks knit in a DK weight, like how on a 4mm needle, why was that so hard to say? Let me know. Yeah, so that was kind of like how we started off the month. A bit of a bummer. And then I started working on what I'm currently wearing now, which is the Ingrid top by Gregoria Fibers. And since this is a paid pattern, I just wanted to give a little bit more like information on the pattern in case you're interested in buying and making. So I have the page up here because I want to try to be better about the information I'm delivering on this podcast. So the Ingrid top by Gregoria Fibers is knit on 3.5mm needles in a sport weight yarn. I used Sandesgarn lin, and I think the color is like dusty aqua or dark aqua. And I was able to find that in a store. I went to the Magpie flagship store in Frederick, Maryland, and my boyfriend actually bought me the yarn, which I thought was very sweet. And I was kind of thinking of patterns I wanted to make when I went in, and I saw the Sandesgarn and I was like, oh, I've never seen this in person. So they had a big selection. I was attracted to the colors that they had in of lin, and I wanted to you know, work with a cotton linen yarn for the summer. Cool. As opposed to just a cotton, because I just worked with a cotton and I have quite a few 100% cotton tanks. So that's the story with at least the yarn and the pattern selection. This tank top comes in 8 sizes in a range from 31 inches to 48.9. That's 80 centimeters to 124 centimeters. And I do have a little bit of an issue with the way that the pattern like presents the sizing and the fit of the garment. So it's supposed, and I'm gonna go ahead and say already that my gauge is like an inch bigger. I think I've ended up adding an inch because of my gauge, but even still, I think that it presents the top as something that's supposed to have 0 ease, but it's also stretchy. So to me, if something is stretchy, you might want to incorporate negative ease into the fit if something is going to like stretch when you wear it. That is something that I've seen in other stretchier patterns in the past, and I thought that might have been a little more helpful to like give guidance for selecting a size. However, like I've knit not many, but like I've knit garments before that are like negative or 0 ease, and so when they said it was stretchy, I probably should have taken that into account and knit a size down. I'm not unhappy with the fit of the garment. There is one thing that I'll show you in just a bit, but I think that's like one part where there could have just been like a little more information in the pattern, and maybe I want to get my hand to be held. However, I just think if you're designing a pattern, it can just be helpful to like put in the most information possible about selecting the fit of the garment, because you understand what the finished garment acts like more than I do. And you can put your thoughts on that in the comments. I might be off base and you might be saying like, I'm expecting too much of a designer. However, I just thought that would have been nice, but I totally take responsibility for my gauge being off when I bring up fit issues in a little bit. So this top is knit top down. You knit the back first, and then you pick up stitches at the shoulders, knit the left right, then you join the front panel, and then you join in the round, and then you knit everything in the round in this really lovely eyelet pattern. And I'll get a little bit closer so you can see. So the eyelets are quite simple. They're just created in a series of yarn overs and knit 2 togethers that she outlines in the patterns. And then the finishings to the tank top are done in a folded hem. So the bottom's folded and the collar's folded, and then the armpit's a bit of a different finishing, which I don't love how mine turned out. And I'll show you here. I guess I'll just start to talk about what I don't like about it, and then I'll talk about the small modifications that I've made. So as you can see, the armpit's really big. And like I said, my gauge is a little wider than what the pattern calls for. And so I'm okay with this being a little bit wider. However, no matter how big this armpit is, I feel like the way that this like rolled hem is finished, it droops in like a really unattractive way, you know? I'm like fine with my bra showing, and again, I'm taking responsibility for that. However, I just don't love the finishing as much as I wanted to, if that makes sense. That being said, I do wish it could look more like this, and I don't think there's an easy way to fix it except ripping back, which I just don't plan on doing, to be honest with you. So that is the story with the armpits. I think if anything, what I might do is try to at least redo this one, because I feel like this one looks like considerably sad and droopy, and I don't know why, and maybe I didn't block it like enough. I don't know. It's not giving what I want it to give. I think maybe it just feels like structureless. I don't know, guys. I'm just feeling like about it. That being said, very happy with the overall look of the rest of the tank top. I love the yarn. The yarn itself, I would say, is a little tricky, especially with the eyelets, in that it's just very easy to split your stitches because of the way the yarn is plied. And let me show you. The plies aren't twisted tightly together, and I think this is just a nature of working with like a cotton or a linen yarn, but they're not very tightly woven together or like twisted together. So it was just kind of easy, especially doing like a knit two together, to like split the stitch, and then you get these little fibers that make the stitch look uneven. So just being cognizant of that. I wasn't too like upset about it because I really enjoyed how knitting this yarn felt in my hand, and like it's just very soft. The eyelets make it stretchy. Definitely, she was not kidding when she said it was stretchy. I didn't really think that something like eyelets and lace would make something stretchy, even though like I was working on a lace pattern before where the whole thing was made of lace and it was supposed to stretch. I guess I just hadn't really considered it. I hadn't made a pattern like this before necessarily, but now I know. And again, another big lesson learned. I think that was the theme of this month. The other thing is that I think I am really concerned with making something too small, so much so that I will make things bigger than they need to be, because I feel like, oh, if something's too big, I can live with it, but if something's too small, I'll be uncomfortable wearing it. And so that's just something that I think mentally for me, I just need to be a little bit more, not conservative in choosing sizes, but just like a little more cognizant and a little more technical, I think, when I am choosing sizes and selectively swatching for different projects. Finally, the modifications that I made for this tank top were that I made it cropped. I made it cropped, clearly. I talk about this in all my videos, but I usually like when things hit around my natural waist, unless they're extremely oversized. So that's kind of the length that I usually go for. And I just made sure to make that length that included the eyelet repeats. And then for the armpits and the collar and the hem, I went a size down in needle size for the finishing, because I already knew the garment was going to be big. So I think the whole item is knit on 3.5 millimeter needles, and I did this and this on 3 millimeter needles. I think I'm happy with how the collar turned out. I was starting by being really aggressive with the amount of stitches I picked up, and that I was doing a lot less than she called for on the collar, and that did not look good. So I did it kind of as directed on the collar. And then when the armpits came, I was really aggressive with like doing a lot less stitches. And so that, I think, I don't know if that has anything to do with this. I think if anything, and I'm not someone that likes to go back and fix things, I'm gonna be honest, if I can like live with it, I will. But if it's really bothering me, what I might do and try to do is go back, try this same method for like those rolled finish, except do another round of like aggressive decreases after picking up stitches. And maybe that will help with the armpit issue and like the sag. Like I wouldn't even mind if it like showed this much bra. I really don't care. That's kind of a lot of bra, you know? If you can see the Calvin Klein on the band, I may have messed up a little bit, you know? So yeah, I think that's where I'm ending with this top. Would I knit it again? I don't think so. I really like the look of this top. However, I don't think I would want more than one in my wardrobe. However, I would like knit it for a friend, or if someone liked it enough. I feel like this would be a nice gift knit because it's pretty easy to make. I will say one thing that I didn't mention is that it knits up really quickly. And again, this is kind of like a no shit Sherlock moment, but when something has holes in it, the eyelets take up a lot of space. So like every round that you're doing, you're increasing your rows by like that much, which is maybe 2 or 3 rounds. So the eyelets help shave off a lot of time for the knitting process. And overall, I just stayed like pretty entertained with this pattern. I would say my biggest issue was with just like adding just a little bit more information about fit and selecting a size. I think it's just really helpful when designers can give the most information they can on that. And I will say, like she says that like gauge is really important. This pattern is stretchy and has 0 ease. So maybe that's all the information she needed to provide, and like it was a user error, just like a skosh more. I don't know. I think this is the first time I've had like major criticism, so I'm kind of like, ooh, do I sound dumb saying this? But this is honestly just my personal experience, and if it is not relatable, that is fine. I will live. You know, I'm still fairly new to garment making. I'm by no means an expert, and like just doing things more and seeing more patterns will help me learn more. Anyway, sorry, this was tangent-y. Would I make this again? Yeah, I answered if I would make this again. But overall, I did enjoy making this pattern, and it was fun, and I really like how most of it looks, and I think it'll be a really just great summer addition to my wardrobe. One last note, I wanted just to note on modesty, if you're worried about the eyelets, I'm sure if you were really worried, you'd probably wear something underneath. I just wanted to let you know I'm just wearing a bra. As you could tell, I just spent half of the show showing you my armpit, but I'm just wearing a bra under it right now, and I feel like the only time you can really see skin is when it's close to your skin. Otherwise, it kind of just looks like dark behind the dots. So just wanted to give you that information in case you were kind of curious about how much skin the eyelets end up showing under the tank top. If you care. And if you don't care, now you know. So that is my experience with the Ingrid top, and those were my 2 finished objects for July. I'm trying to think if I was trying to think if I had any other finished objects, but I don't. I made these 2 tank tops, and I'm happy with that. I learned a lot this month. I think it was, you know, it's good to be humbled every once in a while, and I think it's good to face a few issues. I think it makes us better knitters, and I think it makes us better crafters, and like it gives us better knowledge of what we're doing with our craft. So it's always good to kind of slow down and remember, you know, you don't have to rush through things, and even though the thrill of finishing items can be really exciting, especially for me in the summer because things can be just so quick. It's okay to slow down a little bit and just make sure that you're making them right the first way. You know, I think they say in carpentry, measure once, cut twice. Measure twice, cut once. See, I don't even remember. I didn't even do that well in wood shop, apparently. I couldn't remember that. Anyway, gauge once or twice, knit the item once. That didn't really catch on. I can't see why. Super catchy. Okay, moving on to whips. This is kind of actually a scant podcast now that I'm thinking about it. I think it's kind of front heavy with my finished objects, but whips are pretty like boring, I'm gonna be honest, because I have 2-ish, like 1.5 things that I'm working on. And the first one is a blanket update, and I gave a blanket update in my last podcast episode. I'm crocheting this blanket as a gift to my great aunt, and I can confidently tell you that the only thing I've added since the last episode was this much. And I just started doing this like in the last 3 days since I finished the tank top. So I decided that I really want to focus on this blanket before diving into another project, because I've just noticed that I'm so unlikely to pick up this crochet project if I have something on the knitting needles. And it's not that I dislike crocheting, because obviously I don't. Like, I made this, I'm sure you could make something and really dislike it, but I'm not disliking the process of making this. Is it a little boring? Yeah, but sometimes that's good. But really what I've noticed is that I like get in such a focus when I'm crocheting, and I like really have to get into like a flow state. So it is a little bit harder to just kind of pick up and like get a few rows in. Like one row takes me about 15 minutes. So that's the deal with the blanket, but it's actually like really nice. It's nice and heavy, and you cannot see the bottom right now, but it's covering my ankles. So like my aunt, like, she's a very short lady. This would cover her legs. So I'm feeling happy with the length of it. I just wanted something to, like, if she sits on the couch, she can put it on her lap, you know? It's a throw blanket. It's not going to be anything big. But yeah, that's my experience with the blanket. Like I said, not much there to add. And I have like more information about this in my other podcast, so I'm not going to go like so into depth about, you know, the yarn and stuff, but this is just a ripple stitch crochet pattern. So that's my experience with crochet. It has me thinking, like, when would I make a blanket again? And like, if I ever have a child, maybe is the next time I'd like to make a blanket. As much as I love the idea of having blankets in the house, I think if I do make a blanket again, it would be something that is a little more involved than this. Like, I just seem to be a little more interested in the stitch pattern. And this has decreases and increases, but it's just very rote, which is fine. So if you have any tips for blanket making to like keep it more interesting, would love to hear. But what I'm gonna do is that I'm going on a bit of a road trip this weekend. I'm going to a wedding in Columbus. So what I'm gonna do is, since I'm driving, I'm not going to be driving and crocheting at the same time, don't worry. But since I'll be in the car as a passenger for a good bit of time, I figured I could just bring this with me, and that way it's the only thing I'll work on this weekend instead of a knitting project. And I'm really stopping myself from fully starting a new knitting project, so I can just bang this out. So I have this much yarn left in one of the main colors, and it's getting a little squishy, so I'm just gonna keep on trucking until I don't have enough yarn to keep repeating. And I might have some of this grape purple left over. Yeah, and if I would do this again, I would not do like the sandwich pattern I'm kind of doing, where like two colors are sandwiched in other ones, just because it's not leading to equal yarn distribution, and I really didn't want to have a bunch of leftover acrylic yarn. I might just have one ball, honestly. So that is the blanket update, and I just feel like I did not work on any since I last showed you, which I really haven't, but that's the blanket update. I like looking at it in my apartment. I'm like, I freaking made that. Like, I made all those stitches, so that is fun. Continue to grow and develop my crochet practice is always good. Next project, which I'm pretty sure I'm going to make this top, like almost positive. And I talked about this in my Flash My Stash patterns I'm making this summer video, is the Talia tank by Riley Anderson. And this is exciting because it is a size inclusive pattern. It goes up to a 62-inch bust, and it's this really cute cami with a ruffle edge, and I think that this yarn will be really pretty for it. So this morning I went ahead, and I've shown this yarn before. I didn't show it in my last podcast, so this is technically an acquisition, but I did talk about it in my in my yarn planning. I'm now realizing, yeah, the yarn that I bought here was technically an acquisition, but I already showed you the finished object, so I don't think that counts. Anyway, I talked about this in my yarn pattern summer video, and it's Madeline Tosh, her wool and cotton. My mom picked this out for me when she was on vacation. She stopped in a local yarn store. I believe it was called Castaway in Santa Rosa, and she called me, and it was very sweet. And so she called me in the store and was like, "What do you want?" And I was like, okay, I need to give her some direction, because she's just gonna buy like I could see her buying me like a $30 ball of alpaca yarn, and I'm just like, I don't know what to do with this. So I was like, why don't you take a look at like the cottons or the cotton wools or the cotton and linens? And so she had someone like kind of show her where those fibers were, and then she just picked out the color, and I think she did a great job. And I'm really excited about this color. It is very similar to the shirt that I'm wearing, but it has some deeper shades of blue as well as some brown, purple, and yellow, like very lightly speckled, and also some lighter, whiter parts of the yarn as well. So that's the yarn that I'm using. It's a superwash merino and Pima cotton, and this is a size 3 yarn. So I would say like a DK weight. And I went ahead and caked up the first skein. I just avoid saying the word because it wants to come out of my mouth differently every time I say it. So I wound it up this morning, and I was like, you know what? I just want to knit a little swatch so I can show the podcast, and I can see what it's like, just to give me a little taster of a knitting project. And it was also just really calming to cake up a ball of yarn, and I got to pull out my ball winder, which was really fun, and my Swift. So this is what, I'm just getting real close. This is what the swatch looks like. It's very small, but yeah, I'm really excited with how this is swatching up. It has like a nice stretch. Obviously that isn't inherent in cotton because of the wool. It's a 50-50 cotton and merino blend. And yeah, I just like how the speckles are looking. It kind of reminds me of like denim, like a light wash denim, like kind of. Yeah, so that is this yarn, and I think I'll plan to make the Talia tank once I come back from my trip and I've put in like good honest work on the blanket, and I can go back into summer knitting. This should knit up quite quickly because it's supposed to be knit on 4mm needles, and it's a tank top, so I think I could probably make this in 2 weeks or so, if not less. That is technically my second whip. Yeah, and as far as whips go, that's it. Like I said, I'm really trying to dedicate myself to really hammering out the rest of the blanket, I think, in the coming month, and then, you know, finish summer knitting as it comes. So with that, let's talk really briefly about future plans. And I did just do a whole entire video on future plans, so I'm not going to spend too long on it. But in case you didn't watch that video, which, why are you here if you didn't watch that video? I'm teasing you. We're all friends here. You've seen me show this LBA yarn like so many times on this podcast now. I finally decided I'm going to use this mohair from the Drops Kit Silk. I'm going to make the typical slip over with it. This is LBA Merino Singles in Rose Quartz. That's all I'm saying on that because I've talked about it already. And the only other thing that I keep thinking about that I'm almost 100% certain I'm going to make this fall for me is a pink cardigan. And I have a very specific pink set in my mind, and I've only been able to find like a few iterations of it. Wool and the Gang has sold a pink like this, but they don't have it in, I think, the kind of yarn I wanted in. Excuse me. And it's like a bubblegum pink, or like a pink with a cooler or grayer undertone, because I feel like a lot of pinks out there have an orange undertone or a red undertone, or are otherwise very warm, and I want something vibrant, not hot, but cool. Duh. What else than that? What other else than that? So the one pattern I've seen is called the Cardi Jumper by Inez Oliveria, and it's a light fingering merino and mohair held together, and it's this drop shoulder cardigan that you can wear in the front as a cardigan and then turn it around and wear it as a sweater. I don't know how much I'd wear it turned around, but you could. But I just have an image of like throwing on a pink cardigan on a fall day, and it's really in my head, and like I really have to do it. So this pattern is not size inclusive, and I would really like to be able to choose a size inclusive pattern for this cardigan. So if you have any other like size inclusive pattern suggestions for a cardigan, I'd love to hear them. I'm really looking for like a simple classic silhouette, and yeah, that's really it. And if I could hold a fingering and mohair together, I'd love to, but I guess I could be open to other things. So those are really my only other future plans. Talia tank, typical slipover once it gets warm or once it gets cold, pink cardigan in the fall. Those are the things that are like top of mind. Pink cardigan will be for a while, but yeah, that's what I've been thinking about. That's what I've been thinking thoughts, friends. And you know, we can only knit so fast, and like that's completely okay. So my plans change all the time. I don't even know if I'll make everything that I listed in the video that I posted 3 weeks ago. But that's okay, because I think part of what I love about the knitting process is setting out plans and like thinking about things and kind of mulling over options and design options, and you know, not my designs but other people's designs, and what would make good items in additions to my wardrobe, and kind of just making sure that I'm being intentional about those decisions. So that's something that I'm always trying to remind myself to do when adding things into my wardrobe, especially things that I made myself with my own 2 hands and some yarn and some needles, you know. So with that, I didn't have any acquisitions from this month other than what I'm wearing on my body, which I've already talked about in the Madeline Tosh yarn. So with that, I think that concludes the knitting portion of the podcast. If you'd like to stick around and talk about some entertainment items, you're more than welcome to, but I understand if you don't. And so I think what I'm going to start with is just the order that I wrote things down in, and that's a podcast I listened to this month, a book that I read, and a show that I am fervently watching and catching up on. The first thing that I listened to this month was a podcast, and it was You're Wrong About, specifically the 3-part series they did on Go Ask Alice. And they released these early in July, but I wanted to talk about them because they rocked my world. If you're unfamiliar, I have the description of You're Wrong About because I just tried to describe it and I couldn't. So here's the 2-sentence description from Spotify. But the host is Sarah Marshall, and Sarah is a journalist obsessed with the past. Every week she reconsiders a person or event that might have been miscast in the public imagination. So it's a really interesting podcast and like a really interesting premise. One of the other really good episodes that sticks out in my mind is she talks about the welfare queen with Lacey Mosley, who is thoroughly hilarious and so funny. And however, what I am going to talk about is the episodes on Go Ask Alice. So Go Ask Alice, if you're unaware, is a novel. It was published in the 70s, and the premise of the novel is that it is a real journal from a real teenage girl, and it was edited by an editor, and it was published. And this book was super influential, and it's still best-selling, like, to this day. It's never been out of print since the 70s. It's sold over like 6 million copies or something like that. I read it when I was an adolescent, and if you've read the book, like, trigger warning, drugs, trigger warning, drugs, alcohol, assault, but the book talks about all of these things and this girl's, Alice's, experiences with drugs. However, like, it's not true. It's not someone's journal, and they kind of go through and debunk it. In the first 2 episodes, Sarah and a guest kind of talk about the book itself, and then in the 3rd episode, there's an author of a book called Unmasking Alice, and he's on the podcast talking about, you know, his book and kind of the cultural effects of the book, and they kind of ask him questions based on what they talked about in the past 2 episodes. So it's a really interesting book, and it talks about a really interesting podcast, and it kind of talks about like ties into themes of satanic panic and the war on drugs in the 80s, and it is just like, I can't believe I thought this book was real when I was young and I read it, and they will explain so much more in the podcast better than I can, if that at all interests you. So that is my podcast recommendation. In general, You're Wrong About is just such a good podcast. I think if anyone's really like into podcasts, you've listened to it, but I thought I'd throw that in there if that at all piques your interest. And then the second thing is a book. And this month, my boyfriend and some of his friends are doing a book club, and we read Anxious People by, I'm Googling, by Fredrik Backman, who's a Swedish author, and I really enjoyed reading this book. It is a book about a hostage, like a group of people that found themselves in a hostage situation. I don't want to give too much away. Okay, my phone just cut me off. I'm running out of storage, and I just had to delete a bunch of stuff. So, where was I? Anxious People by Fredrik Backman, Swedish author, about people who are held hostage the day of New Year's Eve. It's a bit absurd, it's funny, it's heart-wrenching, you'll laugh, you'll cry, and I just thought it was a really nice book, and I just tore through it. So I'm not very good at giving a book review because I just feel like I will tell you the entire plot, and that's not like the fun part of reading a book, but I would just recommend it if you like any of those things that I've just listed. Qualities in a book: easy to read, fun stuff. It doesn't take me like too much to be entertained by a book, to be honest with you. Okay, last thing before we close it out for the 5th episode of the Myth by Mandy podcast is that me, a self-proclaimed reality television connoisseur, had never watched Love Island UK, or any Love Island for that matter, but you know, we always have to go to the source material when we're doing these kinds of studies. So I decided last week I'm finally going to do it. It is summer, there's a new season of Love Island playing. I'm just gonna like start, because I've had friends who watch it and they know that I would like it, and they were 100% right. And I love Love Island. Oh my god. I am getting a little tired now that everyone has like real feelings. It's a little less entertaining. So I just finished the Casa Amor episodes, and I'm in between Casa Amor and movie night, and I'm just waiting for movie night. That's where I'm at. But if you're unaware, which I don't know why you wouldn't be, but Love Island is a reality television show started in the UK, and they put a bunch of hot young people into a villa, and they have to couple up every week. And so, you know, hearts get broken, they bring new hot people in, and then people have to, you know, like decide and like test their relationships, and they all talk in fabulous British accents. That was a really bad one, but I swear I've been doing a really good one all around the house to myself. I've just been saying Gemma over and over again. Gemma. Anyway, so I've been really enjoying Love Island UK. I watched an ungodly amount of reality television in one sitting. And so if you want something that you can just keep on in the background and you need something to keep you company, would definitely recommend it. The voices are just, love them, love the accents. And my one thing that I had to add, and I'm someone, again, like I said, I fancy myself a reality television connoisseur. However, I do I never really got into The Bachelor in the US, and everyone says there hasn't been a good season of The Bachelor in years, and I would agree. I think the show sucks. I'm just saying it right now. It's so stale, so overdone, and the fact that Love Island can run for 8 weeks consecutively and keep me on my toes, yet with no alcohol, they barely drink any alcohol, yet the Bachelor producers have to pump these people full of alcohol and prod them, which I'm sure the Love Island producers do. But to make such a subpar product, we need to step our game up. The United States of America when it comes to reality television. So thank you if you made it this far to the end of the video. I really appreciate any time you spend with me on my channel. I'm really close to being able to get my channel monetized. I need 1,000 subscribers to do that. At the time of recording, I think I had a 905. So if you're watching and you like my videos, it would really mean a lot if you could subscribe to me and I could start making little pennies off of Google AdSense. That'd be great. It's kind of my goal for the year. But really, I do appreciate you spending the time with me and talking about knitting and things that we're passionate about. It's really, really been such a great part of my life this year. Not to get too sappy, just a little bit. And yeah, so thank you for being here, and I hope to see y'all soon. Bye! In the villa. The boy I decided to recouple up with is a merino wool house double with mohair. This boy, my eyes have been on him since he's been in the villa, and I think he's proper fit. And we have really good banter, and I can't wait to see where this relationship takes us. I can do some words, but my whole English accent's not great.